By the way, Jermaine just told me there will be a private ceremony Tuesday morning, early, family only, and then the 10 o'clock.
And some special guests as well.
And special guests. And then the 10 o'clock will be the large memorial service, and there'll be many others, right? There'll be other services
singers
in other parts of the country.
Yes, exactly.
So Tuesday's just the start of what will be a series of memorials.
What makes me angry is, Larry, the will is exactly Michael's wishes, and they should be carried out exactly the way Michael wanted them. Anybody that tried to contest this will is not
But it doesn't
Michael's
bother
wishes.
you that your father wasn't mentioned or yours?
It doesn't bother me because if my mother's mentioned, my father's fine. I mean, my mother's fine, we're all fine. But the most important, it's not about money, Larry. It's not about profit. We're a family. We're a family.
Okay.
We don't let that get in the way. That's not important to us. That's not important.
Did you hear any other results from any other autopsies? Do you know anything more?
No, when it comes to these things that they're saying, excuse me, but I'm very uneducated when it comes to drugs, and I want to be that way.
No, but has there been, there was a second autopsy. Do you know of any other?
No, I don't, but I'm pretty sure there's going to be all kind of speculation and things that are being said, but the most important thing is we have to look at who Michael really is. That's what's most important, Larry. That's so important because he gave his all to try to change this world and make this world a better place, and that's what's important. All this other stuff, and it's not important, Larry, please.
You're doing your best to change it. I've just got to ask the questions, Jermaine. You've done a fine job here. Thank you.
Yes.
Thanks for being with us. We just got to know.
Thank you.
Public's very interested in your brother.
Thank you.
You realize, of course, that the public is interested in all these questions, and we've had a beautiful day here at Neverlands, but there's great interest in, as you expressed it, he changed the world. Well, there's interest in him, in his will, in how his family's affected. You do understand that?
Yes. I do feel that he was given to us specially, and they've taken him back. Allah has taken him back. And those who have tried to ridicule him, to make a mockery of him, they realize.
Asking questions about the will, though, isn't ridicule or mocking. It's just
No. But what I'm saying is this. If Michael makes a will, no one should contest it. No one.
I got you. Okay.
No one.
Thanks,
it's what his wishes were.
We're going to do lots more with you.
Thank you.
Jermaine Jackson.
One of the things you see around here is the Sycamore logo, because Michael Jackson bought this pretty much intact in terms of the main house.
Correct. Yeah, this was the logo of the previous owner. It was called the Sycamore Valley Ranch. In fact, he stayed here when he was doing the Say, Say, Say video, and he enjoyed it. He liked it. He wanted to buy the property. Then we went on tour, and during our tour, '88, the back tour, he had bought the property and said, "Hey, Miko, I got the ranch." Yeah, this was the focal point of the house, I think. We would all meet here. My father would eat here. Michael would eat here. Everyone would meet here. We'd watch TV with the fireplace here. Sit here on the bar stool here with a kitchen full of food. Video games here on the table.
All right, Larry, we're inside Michael Jackson's bedroom suite with Miko Brando, our tour guide here, and you're looking at the doors, and you can see the locks on the doors. Miko, privacy was key in this room, obviously.
Yeah, he liked his privacy. When the doors were open, you know, it was okay, but when he locked, he wanted his privacy. He had his privacy.
This is one of the bathrooms.
You know, it was okay, but when he locked, he wanted his privacy. He had his privacy.
This is one of the bathrooms. There are 2 bathrooms in this suite, and this is the area where Michael Jackson also slept sometimes. There's a staircase up there and a small bedroom upstairs. You say he slept on both levels?
Yeah, he slept wherever he felt like sleeping. He'd crash out, so he had a choice of 2.
Real quickly before we go, Larry, there's been a lot of talk about this closet. It is massive, and in the corner of it is a secret compartment, or secret little area. And Miko, you said this was sort of a safe room just in case.
Yeah, this was just some place, you know, in case something ever happened. It would be where he'd go.
I'm Jason Bronis at Neverland Ranch, standing outside the king-sized home of the King of Pop. Just off the bedroom is Jackson's walk-in closet. It's completely cedar-lined. But back here in the corner, there is one interesting thing. Here behind where his clothes would hang is a locked door. Behind it, a room where we're told Jackson stored his most valuable and prized possessions.
In dit gigantische huis is dit de inloopkast van Michael Jackson. Hier hingen al zijn persoonlijke kleren. En achter deze rij met kleren, die er nu niet meer hangen natuurlijk, zat een geheime deur. Die zit er nog steeds. Dit is de safe room. Een ruimte die rijke mensen in hun huis hebben, zodat als er bedreiging is of als er dieven komen, dan kunnen ze zich hierin opsluiten. De safe room van Michael Jackson.
With Gotham Chopra, close friend of Michael Jackson. He worked with Michael on the multi-platinum albums Dangerous and History, and of course you know his father, Deepak. This is obviously not your first visit here. How does it feel to be here without him?
You know, I was not sure how it was going to feel. It kind of feels nice, actually. Certainly not without him. But, you know, the last few years, Michael used to say this had turned into a house for him. It was no longer a home. And I do think there is a tranquility back to it, you know, now that we're celebrating him again.
Has the loss sunk in, Gotham?
You know, I don't think so. It's starting to. I was, you know, overseas actually when it first happened. I was shocked, not entirely surprised, frankly, because of knowing Michael and knowing of the things he had talked about. But I think I'm starting to feel a little bit, you know, more sadness, actually.
When was the last time you saw him?
I saw him actually a few months ago. I spoke to him a few weeks ago.
Did he look well?
To me, you know, it's subjective, but yeah, Michael was always, he was always delicate and small and thin, but he looked no different than he had, you know, for years to me. So that first time it was a quick visit just with my father. I subsequently came here through the years, brought my cousins, brought my friends, and Michael just loved having, you know, people he loved playing. So it was great here.
Did you ever buy any of the stories, the molestation stories, all that?
You know,
how'd you feel?
I mean, I felt conflicted, I mean, obviously, but I could only speak to my experience. Like I said, coming here as a 14-year-old for the first time, spending all this time with Michael and never feeling uncomfortable in his presence.
The three attorneys who represent the Jackson family all join us now. They are Londell McMillan, lead attorney, Bert Levitch, who filed for Catherine Jackson to have control of the estate, and Diane Goodman, who also filed. They are from three different law firms. All represent. Londell as the lead. You said earlier today that the will from Michael Jackson, written in 2002, has been located.
Yeah, we received a copy of the will after we filed our petitions yesterday to protect the estate and to protect the children on behalf of the family and Miss Catherine Jackson. And so we're currently reviewing the will, and we're going to review it in due course. And we've hired some very competent people who are in the trust and estates areas as well as in the family areas, and I have my colleagues to my left.
Is there anything about this will, without revealing it, I realize that is especially surprising?
In a way, it reflects a thoughtful decedent.
I mean, Michael was very thoughtful in this will.
That's how I take it initially.
Will anything, Diane, in it surprise people?
No, I don't think so.
Okay. Who drew it up, by the way?
We don't know.
So you weren't the lawyer at the time?
No, absolutely not.
Did the family attorneys file documents stating that there was no will? Did that ever happen?
At the time, there was no will. We went into court yesterday morning for the specific purpose of having Catherine appointed as special administrator for an interim period so that she could begin the process of securing the assets to make sure that things didn't start disappearing.
And that happened, right?
That did.
She was granted that. Temporary means what?
There is a pair of hearings pending, and at that time, the court will be making a determination as to whether those appointments should be made permanent.
So you can change your will every day, right, Londell? I can write a new will tomorrow for the will I wrote yesterday.
Wait, if you're alive, obviously you can do that.
Yeah, good, thank you.
And let me just clarify. When you said there was no will presented to the family as of the time of the filing.
But there could have been a will you don't know about that might have been changed. That will written in 2006, right?
Well, that's the process. That is correct, and we're trying to actually ascertain whether or not there are other documents, whether there are other wills. We really want to try and find what was the best intent of Michael Jackson.
In terms of the complexity of the estate administration, you need to keep in mind that, to the best of our knowledge, his business dealings were quite complex, and it will take quite a long time to sort out all of those issues.
Did you do you deal with his lawyer, Michael's lawyer, as well?
Well, we're certainly dealing together on this.
I mean, with Michael's lawyer.
Well, you know, that's an interesting question, Larry. Question of who Michael's lawyer was. Well, I think there were a lot of lawyers over a period of time, and that's one of the reasons that there's some confusion.
Doesn't he have a current lawyer?
When you say Michael, who are you referring to?
Jackson.
When you say Michael, who are you referring to?
Jackson.
Well, let's be clear. I was one of Michael's lawyers, but unfortunately, Michael is deceased, and he used about 3 or 4 of us lawyers, and I handled many of his matters.
So you represented both him and the family?
I represent Miss Catherine Jackson, Mr. Joseph Jackson, and I represented Michael for the 3.5 years prior to his passing, along with other lawyers.
Are those other lawyers still involved?
Some of them are still involved.
The following statement was given to Larry King Live on behalf of John Branca and Joel Katz. They were hired by Michael Jackson to represent him prior to his untimely death. These 2 highly respected attorneys and their law firms are now carrying out his wishes and desires as expressed in his last will and testament. It is their sincere desire that Michael's affairs be handled with dignity and respect. Since 1980, Mr. Branca has played a critical role in helping Mr. Jackson build the substantial assets that are now part of his estate. Mr. Jackson's will, signed on July 7, 2002, names Mr. Branca as co-executor along with Mr. Jackson's longtime friend, John McClane. The death of Michael Jackson was a tragedy, and everyone who knew and loved him pray that he can rest in peace. Comment, Bert?
Well, it's an interesting development, Larry. As you know, the family has a copy of the will, and they'll be reviewing it, and I'll be discussing it with them. Certainly know one of them to have a fine reputation. I'm not familiar with them. I don't know them, to answer your question.
The reputation of who do you know?
John Branca.
So he wouldn't speak if he didn't know what he was talking about, right? You would think. I mean.
Unlikely, but my concern is that he may not have the full picture. There's certainly a possibility that he was involved at one point, and as I said it earlier in response to a question, things were in transition often in Michael's life.
Lundell, they're saying, though, that they're his attorneys now, as I read that.
Mm-hmm. Well, John Branca has been with Michael Jackson from 80 to about 90, I think 6, and then wasn't. And there was a break. And then I understand recently from Mr. Branca that he was just recently brought on a week ago.
Oh, Mr. Branca told you that.
Well, Mr. Branca told me and others affirmed it. So I just want to put it in context. There's a long history and a legacy that they've had. There was a separation for quite some time. Apparently, Mr. Branca had the will in his safe. So one of the issues that we'll have to explore is, are the individuals named in the will still the people that Mr. Jackson wanted to administer and control his life after he passed and move on?
This can get involved.
It can get involved.
When does all this, Bert, take place in court? When is the will read? When are the people,
well, the will
probate, as they say?
Okay, well, assuming there's a will, we've seen copies, as you have said, the family's aware of it. Eventually, someone needs to lodge that will with the court. That has to happen within 30 days of the decedent's death. Typically, at the same time, a petition for probate is brought, seeking not only the entry of that will to probate, but also the appointment of someone, typically the people named in the will, as the executors of the estate.
And that could take place within 30 days?
Yes.
You want to add something, Lundell?
Yeah, again, I just want to go back to what our priorities always were and why we filed. Initially was to focus on the best interests of the children, and so that we can have custody with the wonderful Miss Catherine Jackson. Everybody knows her as a matriarch of love for this family, and they're in great shape.
Pretty clearly we believe the judge did the right things this morning and this afternoon by pretty clearly what happened in as brief a form as I can make it is the judge admitted the will to probate, Michael's will. We believe the judge did the appropriate thing, made the right decision. It was clear from Michael's will that he wanted Mr. Branca and Mr. McLean to be the executors. The judge took the first step by appointing them special administrators. It's our obligation, our duty, our responsibility, and our desire to do everything we can to carry out Michael Jackson's wishes, maximizing the assets of this estate and allowing his fans to continue to enjoy the great legacy that he brought to all of us. Secondly, the judge extended the letters of special administration for John Branca and John McLean, which was appropriate under the circumstances. Third, the special administrator's request for a family allowance for Mrs. Jackson was granted. The special administrator's family allowance for the children was granted, although the judge made some modifications to the amount which Mrs. Jackson consented to. The request of the special administrators, AEG, Bravado, and Columbia, for Mrs. Jackson to sign a confidentiality agreement so we could get her and her attorneys contracts that will bring millions of dollars of revenue to Michael Jackson's estate was ordered by the court at our request. That is, the court ordered them to agree to the confidentiality of those contracts so the court could then make a ruling, and we believe will approve those deals, which again will be substantial revenues to the estate. So we were pleased with that and believe the judge gave the appropriate order. And we are due back here again, as you know, next week for additional proceedings. And we're quite pleased that the judge did what we thought was appropriate.
We're hoping to have a resolution as soon as we can. We know that Mrs. Jackson was the person he trusted the most, and we look forward to her appointment and participation, and we hope to resolve this as best as we can. We respect the court's decision and ruling to place Mr. John Branca and Mr. John McLean in temporary custody and temporary administration as special administrator up until August 3rd. From the beginning until now, our issue has always been to respect Mr. Jackson's wishes, allow his family time to grieve, to make sure that we did not rush into any of these processes, make sure that the children's best interests are served first. We have no reason to believe that this is going to turn into a nasty fight over millions and millions of dollars. Similar to the issue with the children, we've been working prudently and with care and great pause to make sure that this is not going to be a media fight. This is not going to be a nasty fight, but it's going to be in the best interest of the legacy of Mr. Jackson and the families.
We are told that the will that has been lodged with the court predates the will that's been offered for probate, and as a result, unless the 2002 will that's been offered for probate is not admitted to probate, the earlier will is not relevant. So are we concerned about it? Not at this time.
Well, probably the most significant thing that happened today is that Katherine Jackson was named the guardian of her grandchildren. According to Michael's will, that's what he wanted, and so she is now the guardian permanently of the 3 children. This will be reassessed in 8 weeks when they come in for a progress report, and basically they will have, social workers and such interviewing her, and will come in with a progress report on the children. But it was very interesting because to have her appointed, the 2 older children, Paris and Prince, had to sign declarations saying that they agreed to it, and they did.
Los Angeles Superior Court Judge Mitch Beckloff approved an agreement making Katherine Jackson the children's guardian and preserving Debbie Rowe's parental rights, giving her meaningful visitation with the children. The professionalism of Katherine Jackson's attorneys, Londell McMillan and Diane Goodman, helped bring about that result. But in particular, I want to applaud Debbie Rowe. She's faced difficulties and pressures none of us know, and today's agreement shows that she responded with heart, integrity, and selflessness.
She's a very elegant lady, you know. She was beautifully dressed in a lovely beige and white suit. And her daughters were with her, Rebbe and Latoya, and also one of her sons, Randy. They all came in together. She was just very conservative, very, interested watching what was going on. At one point, there were about 36 lawyers in the courtroom, and it was wild. And they were talking about how all of their agreements have to be submitted to Catherine for her input or whatever. She doesn't really have a right of approval or disapproval over them, but she could raise objections if she wanted to. There will be more court dates, and most of them will have to do with the estate. They have to decide now. Catherine Jackson has asked the judge to tell her, through her lawyers, whether she can challenge the executors that were named by her son, John Branca and John McClain. John Branca was there today. And the judge said he had never been asked for such a thing, where he's asked to give an opinion in advance of whether such a challenge would make her, she would be written out of the will. Because there is a clause in the will, in the trust, that says no contest. You can't contest this, or you are written out as a beneficiary.